Right, moving on to this onion here. Move there, that's right. I've picked up a 2B and I'm just going to put in, to start with, this lovely split in the skin here, because I want to make sure that this literally rolls right round and under the onion there, and then up into there, and that's where the split is. So we're just going to put in a nice little bit of depth of colour here. And then I'm just going to get quite pale quite quickly, well, as pale as the 2B will allow me, without pressing too hard here, because we want to just bring this up to this point here where there's going to be a lovely highlight. So we want to do some lovely gradation into that little bit there. Come round this side. And then what you need to do is look at the depth of that bit above and this bit here. So this bit is obviously going to be a bit darker, so let's put in some extra depth just there, and then we want a lovely little bit just coming down there, tiny bit of depth coming around that side there like that. This side has got a little bit of darkness to it as well, fades out quite quickly, and so does this side. And then just blend that line in that we first put to there, bring it down across there just a tiny little bit, strengthen it on this side, into there like that, and just a little bit on this side, and we'll leave this central part just a little bit paler. And we're just going to put the hint of a line down that central part there. Like that. So we've got our split, which is great. Now then, what we need to do, what I need to do, whoops, sorry, I've just moved my paper. I need to make sure that I'm resting my hand on some paper to stop myself making the paper dirty. And up here we're going to put in that nice dark edge that comes down to this line here. And it goes up to about here. And now what we've got to do is just make sure that we just soften these edges. And up here we've got a line coming round there. And that does need a tiny little bit of picking off with a putty rubber just on that edge there, just to make that a little bit softer. We want to mark in this line here just a little bit, and then we'll just put in just a very soft little bit of graphite just in that little area there, and then make sure that these lines here just come up and into that shadow just there. And then we want a little hint of graphite just down there. I'm just stroking the paper carefully, because actually this line here, I'm just going to just make sure that that blends into the onion above, just to make sure that we can see that darker line there. So the prominent lines are here, and this one, and then it just gets a little bit raggedy coming down here. And then you've got this little section here that I've traced in, is just another little shadow area. So I'll put that in. It's just a little bit mottly on this side round here, but here we've got quite a dark area, and it comes up there, and then it goes softly into that section there. I'm just going to pick off a tiny little bit just here, because I want to make sure that this shows. So you've got that little round bit there, and then this comes there like that, rather than gradating into it. There's a kind of tiny little V shape, like a bird's wing, when we used to draw crudely birds like that. So I just want to make sure that that shows. So that's going to come up to about there, and then just soften these little lines out a little bit, because they're not showing very much. Of course, we can always use an eraser to just lighten them even more if we want to, a little bit later on. I think I might use some F on there in a little while, so won't do it for now. And then here we've got a light area, Well, it's fairly light, but it's a bit mottly as well, so we're just going to put in a few kind of almost random little markings coming up to there. It looks a bit strange, but it won't, because we've got to put some lighter shading on. So let's put these little mottly bits just down here, and again I've drawn in just a little bit of the shape, but if you just do it a little bit randomly, you'll be absolutely fine. Now under here we have just by here we have a dark area, so let's put that little bit in there, up to there. Make sure that's nice and dark in there. And then you've got a little line coming across there like that, and then there's a lovely line from the onion coming down there, and then this bit is just a little bit of a paler shadow, but still a shadow to put in, and make sure that that line comes out and through like that. And then we have a couple of little zigzaggy markings here, but it's very pale just here, so we don't want to do too much. And we'll go down here. We've got so this area is shading that you will see from the photograph. So just tiny little circular movements all the time with this. a nice fine line in here that travels all the way up to there. So we want to make sure that that's in, and then on this side there's a tiny gap, and then we've got a little bit of shading in here as well that joins that and comes down into a little V shape and meets that area there. As I said, this is mostly mottled, so we're not going to worry too much about that at the moment. We need to put in some shading under here onto these little bits of skin from the one above. Nice sharp line into there. Right, we're getting there. Now in here there's a tiny gap, so we're going to put in some of this same pencil, just the 2B, just very lightly, and just get some colour in here. Fade that out and then bring that down from above, just here. And this bit's a little bit darker. Just going to put in one or two very fine lines just at this bottom edge here, just with the very, very point of my pencil, just so that we can create a few little ridges in there. And then we need to put in a little bit more very light shading down here. Right, now I just want my F. Where's my F? Actually, I'm just thinking that although I will use the F. I was just going to go on to one of the H's, but I'm going to use the F, and I'm just going to very lightly just stroke across this section here, very, very, very lightly. In fact, you could almost use the side of your pencil and just put in just a little bit of very light shading. It really is incredibly light, so you can't really see much, probably not at all on the camera, but you will see that you're putting in something. And then over here as well, like that. And then I'm just going to use this on this edge. We just want just a little bit of lighter graphite in that bottom edge there. And then just this little bit here, that is a root. So I'm just going to pop that in like that, and just make sure that you give it just a tiny second edge. It's not easy because it's so fine, but it just needs that second edge in there like that. And then I'm just going to also just pick a tiny bit of that out as well, so that when I blend it, it'll be even softer. That's lovely. Now, taking the 2B again, let's get some colour and some markings onto this side. So this one, this more prominent, it's soft edged on both sides. and this is darker under this side than the one above, so we're just going to put in a little bit of extra depth just there that we can gradate out as we work. We've got a little strong marking just there. Haven't really spoken much about pressure, but the pressure to a point is worked for us because we're using different strengths of graphite, but I'm still, even with the heaviest ones, only using the very lightest of touches because I really don't want to be too heavy-handed at all. Can always add more, but when you start using the torchons or the cotton buds, you'll find that, you know, the work that we need to do is quite often done for us with the lovely blending that they create. So it's just a case of just working very lightly. Right, so I'm now going to use my F, and with the side again, like I did on the other side, I'm just going to put in, to start with, a little bit of shading just there. And then I shall use my paper torchon to go over it, and then we'll come back and look at where we need to put extra markings in. So I'm just going to put in now with an HB pencil just a few extra little bits of shading up here and in there, And I'm going to add a tiny little bit of extra again to this onion here. Just gradate that in just a tiny little bit. I just need a tiny bit of extra depth just in there. We've got those nice mottly bits in there, but we just need to accentuate some of these shadows. Just tiny little bits makes all the difference. And in here I just want extra depth. And I'm just going to pick off a tiny little bit just up here. I'll put it back in again in a moment with an F. In fact, I'll do it now actually, and I'm not going to use an F, I'm going to use a 3H, but I just want to make that a lot lighter. And I'll blend all that together, and then, although I've almost got what I wanted here, I'm just going to pick out just a tiny little hint down there and then put it back in again with the 3H. Like that. And I think we need just a little bit of 3H just skimmed across there, just so that it's not pure white paper, like that. And we need a little bit just up there as well. Just accentuate that little edge a tiny bit more, like that. And then I'm going to use again my HB and just under here just again accentuate those shadows a tiny little bit. so that this one above really does pop forward. Like that. Right, I'm happy with that, so I will just make sure that I clean up that edge beautifully around there, like that. Yep, that looks really, really nice. Okay, so I was going to leave some of that just the drawing, but decided not to, because I think that it would be better just doing it on the one onion that's right at the top, which we're going to be working on next. Right, so I've made up my mind I am definitely going to leave some of this just as a drawing, but I do need to put in a little bit of shading down here, so I'm going to do that first. So I'm going to take my 7B, because it's really quite dark in here, and make sure that I'm right under the camera. So let's first of all put in beautiful fine sharp edge to that, and this edge is darker than that little bit behind, so again put in a nice sharp edge to here, and then let's get in just a little bit of the circular movements we need to get that shading in there. And there's a little bit of skin here, which, as far as I am aware, belongs to this onion. I still haven't turned my phone down. Do it now. There we go. Right, so let's get in. Just make sure you keep that lovely sharp edge. Now then, we don't want to be over enthusiastic with this 7B, because it is incredibly soft and incredibly strong in colour, or depth of shading, should I say. So just going to put in just a little bit more. And then I'm going to swap over to a 2B, and just going to look at what's going on up here. So that little line comes up there, and it actually curls and goes round to there. And then, because I've got to be careful, make sure I can see exactly where I'm going with this, We have this little bit here that's dark. And that bit, yeah, so that bit's paler. So we just bring this round. Now, where we have this lovely strong bit here, this is the place where we can start really putting in some markings, but we don't want to put in too many if we're going to, as I say, leave this as partly just drawing and partly shaded. In fact, I've just made a mistake. I need to just leave a small line just above that. Take that out. That's good. And then we have another dark line that goes like there and there. And bring that round there. It's quite a soft edge to this. And then there's a line here, and then we just got this little bit of papery edge that I believe comes there and then turns and comes back up there. Actually, I think it starts more or less here, so I might erase that other little mark I've just made. Now at some point I've got to make up my mind just how much of this I'm going to shade and how much I am now going to leave as just a line drawing in graphite. So I think I'm going to just stop and stand back and have a little look and decide exactly how much of this I'm going to do before I do any more and regret it. Right, like I said, I'd better stop and have a little look before I decide how much of this I'm going to draw and how much I'm going to shade. I will be back. Right, I should now I think I know where I'm going, I should say. Right, so I'm going to I've emphasize these because I'm going to leave most of these as drawing. I might do a bit more shading down here. I want to get in the shading under the split skin. To there. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry, I'm using an HB. I haven't told you. Right, now then, using our 3H, I'm going to put in the lightest shading under here because this is leaving a very defined edge just here. I think I'm going to just about get this bit done before I have to revert to artificial lights, which I don't want to do. In fact, I might not do any more. I'll probably come back and do a little bit more tomorrow because I don't like working with artificial lights at all. Right, now then, in this little area here, where there's most light, I'm just going to pick off a little bit of that. And then using the 3H, just go back into that and just put a little bit of shading. And then when you come down here, you can swap back to your HB. We can have a little bit more depth in here. And you want a little bit of a darker line under here as well. Swap back again to the 3H. Just emphasize that little bit of shading, just a tiny bit more just there. Right, I think I'll have another little look and decide how much more I'm going to do. I know I want to do a little bit up here, without a doubt. As I said, I want to leave some of this as just the drawing, but I want to put in a bit more shading up at this end, and then I'm going to leave this area as just the pencil lines that I would have shaded in had I decided to do so. So let's just put in this line there, comes down to there. Oh, I'm using an HB, sorry, forgot to say. And this piece of skin comes up and it kind of just peters out just there, so we just give that a slight curve. And then we've got some little bits of shading here as well, just not as dark as we've just done. But it does get a little bit darker on that bend, so that will just help to show the shape. And then just bring that just lightly down there. It's got a soft edge to it, but we can use the cotton wool bud or the paper torchon to make that even softer. And then this is very pale just in there, just tiny little bit. I need to turn my phone off again. So we've done that little bit in there. So we just want to make sure that this bit comes down here. Little gap just there to about there. Sorry, I'm just going to turn my phone down. That's better. So now we've done that little bit there, and it shows that there's a line just there which we want to get in. And then this shadow here just fades upwards. And into this area here, joining that line there. And then there's a little bit more of it that comes following that line up there. It comes up here like this and blends over slightly into there. And then we want to just accentuate a little bit that curve just there, and then this one just gets a little bit lighter as it comes up there. And then I'm just going to accentuate now that little line there, just to make sure that we've got extra depth to show some of the lines in the skin. Tiny little bit more just there. And then let's come down here and just put a little bit extra on that little bit there, and even more on that one there. So same HB, but just a little bit more pressure. And then I'm just going to make sure that this area here is actually darker now than what I've already got. Right, now that's obviously going to be slightly coloured there. Now then, let's take, I don't want a 3H, that would be too hard. I'll go an F, I think, and just put in one or two of these little bits here, so we've got some shading along this line here. And just make sure that that's a nice sharp line going up there. And then we've just got some light shading, just not quite getting to that edge. One or two lines that come right down, very fine lines though, we don't want too many. And just put a nice sharp line in there and up there, and we'll sharpen up those as well, just a little bit. And then we've got a light line coming here, and then this one actually, I can see quite what I've done, but actually the shading comes around this way to show a curve. And so we want this little strip to be a little bit darker. And these all come like that shape. And into there like that. And then this area here has got shading in it. That joins up with that little bit. And then, don't get lost here. And I think I have, no, right, so sorry, so that bit comes up and joins into there like that. I needed just a little bit more HB in there because I need extra depth of colour. And then leave a tiny little gap and then a little bit more just here. And so I think I'm just going to put a little bit of extra shading just there and just there and just along this bit here. Like that. And this is quite catching the light, so I'm going to turn my paper round slightly, and with the HB I'm just going to put in that little curve in the skin there. Don't want too much of the HB, just a little bit, and very, very lightly. And then let's swap back over to the F and get a very sharp edge on there, and make sure that those areas meet. A little bit of shading on the top there, not much, just bring that down a tiny bit, not to the edge, and then we can put in just some light shading just there. Just a couple of extra little, those fine lines, just to show the beautiful markings of the skin. Like that. And then, as I said, we've got that little bit in there, which is also what I wanted, to show that little bit of the split. And then the rest of this, I don't think I'm going to do, I might do a tiny little bit on this edge. I'm going to stand back and have a look at this first and then decide how much more I want to do, because I do want to leave some of it unfinished. Right, I'll have a stand back and have a look, and I will be back. Okay, so I've decided to do just a little bit more down this side. I hope I don't end up actually completing it. I'm quite determined to leave a little bit of this to show the drawing. Let's take an HB and look at some of the shading down here. So from this line here, this comes down and is quite deep. And then there's another line here that I'm going to put in, and this line here. I actually think I've put that just a little bit too far over, so I'm just going to take it out. Mistakes happen. Just looking at the photograph and thinking that it's that wasn't quite right. I think that's where we need to blend out so that we get a little paler piece. And then we'll just put in a couple of these darker bits here. So we've got this line here that's very prominent just here. Then there's a little gap. And then we've got this dark bit here that goes into that little bit of skin under there. Can't quite see what's happening, which is unfortunate, not even from the photograph. And then we'll just bring that lightly down there before we get into that little bit that's part of the root. And then this all fades. A little bit of dark just there. And this, just a tiny little bit of shading just on there. I really don't think I'm going to do any more. I'm going to leave it at that, I'm sure. I will come back to this tomorrow, and if I decide that I just can't bear the thought of leaving it undone, I'll probably finish it off, but let's just see. I might even canvass some opinion from my classes next week before I decide for sure. Okay, for now I'm going to leave it. If I carry on, then this video will just carry on and you'll be none the wiser. There won't be a big gap of a few days, obviously. So yes, leave it alone just for a little while. Bye for now. Right, well, do you know what? I've stood here and I've looked at this and oh, I just can't not finish it. I've decided that this isn't the right piece of work to leave something just as partly a drawing. I think that that works best when you've, say, got some fruit on a tree and you can leave some of the leaves. But with this, I just absolutely can't bring myself to do it. So I'm going to finish off this complete onion so that it's all a nice piece of finished work. So with that in mind, let's take a 2B and let's put in some of the dark edges down at this bottom end to show where the little bits of skin are torn and lifting. And then it just comes down there and into that on the left hand side of the line, like that. And then we have a little bit of a V just there. And then a tiny little bit that just comes down there quite lightly. This bit comes across here, just a little bit of a dark line, and then lighter up here, but just use the same 2B, just be very careful. And that goes straight across the top like that, and that little V that I've drawn in was the shadow. And then there's a little bit of shadow just there. And now we've got some of this in already, so let's put in, so that comes down there like that. And then we've got that bit, and then we've got this dark bit here. I think that bit comes along there for that. And then we've just got this little bit in the middle. So we've got dark in there, a lighter bit there, darker there. Right, now then, let's see what's going on down here. We've got a little bit of a line that comes under there and up. I've made life a bit difficult for myself here because I can't quite see what's going on. that bit's there, so we need shadow in there. And that comes down there and quite dark to there. And then this little bit comes round here. And up and round into there. And then just at the bottom here we've got another little bit of dark just in here, curls under there. And then under and along there just a little bit, and then that little bit there is lighter and goes under. We have got just here a little marking, so we'll just put that in the dark and fade that out, and then just leave that tiny gap and put a little bit in on that side of it as well. And then just here we've got just a little bit up there that's a bit of a patch. Get it in now, makes it easier, and then just leave that tiny little fine gap and bring that down there like that. Into there, and then just here we've got just a little bit of extra shading. Now this one comes down here and comes into there like that. So just make that a little bit softer and darker. And then let's just bring just a little bit of that down there, very lightly. Right, now I'm going to change to my F pencil, which is here, and we're going to start working from here across. So we've got that shadow in there, then that one. So this one is very light. and then all of this area, and we've got a few lines in, so we don't have to worry too much, and we'll just put in just a little bit of this more or less all over, and then we can start looking at the areas where we want extra dark. Come back to that bit in a minute. Right, just put a little light layer over all the areas now that I've left white, and then we'll blend them in and come back to them. Just do this very lightly. Right, and now I'm going to just blend that in softly and then look at where we need to put some extra shading. Right, so I've just gone off camera just around that little area with a little bit of the HB to give it a little bit of colour, and I've now picked up the F again, and I just want to put in just a little bit more shading on this side. And then I just need to put in just one or two darker lines in various places. Especially this one. Got that one in there. Just actually just gradate that down a tiny little bit more, I think, there. And this one. And just make sure that we've got that fine ridge line just showing in there where it's darkest. sharp as it comes down into there. And let's bring that round there more and into that area there. Make that spot a bit bigger now, I think, too. And now we've got that little bit in there, which is fine. Got that little bit down there, which is fine. And then from here, it gets a little bit darker in this central section. So we'll just come up to about there. and then this one is now going to be made even darker. Quite happy to still use this pencil though, that's fine, because we've got one layer on there already. And now I am going to change pencil, and I'm going to find my HB again, and we're going to darken up these areas in here now quite a bit. Just keep following the lines of the onion and all will be well. There, and then we'll just add a little bit more in this little section here. And maybe just a tiny little bit there as well, a little bit of extra depth just there. Don't need any up there, no. Might just sharpen that line up there. I think that needs just to be a little bit sharper. Right, let's blend all of those in now and we'll see where we go. But I think we're looking quite good. That's all right just there, don't need to worry about that. Yeah, I'm much happier with that. I'm glad I did finish it off. I don't think I would have been at all happy if I'd have just left it. Right, so I will blend that out and then make any decisions about any tiny little alterations or additives that we need before we finish.